Have you ever wondered why some people feel completely at peace when they're alone at home, while others can't stand a single quiet evening without noise, movement, or company? Maybe you've been called antisocial, lazy, or disconnected from the world, simply because you enjoy your own space. But what if that preference hides something far deeper? Something that Carl Jung might have called the call of the inner world. Jung believed that some souls are born facing inward. They don't seek stimulation from the outside. They seek meaning from within. Their home isn't a cage. It's a mirror, a temple, a quiet laboratory where the psyche reveals its truth. So when you feel that strange comfort in solitude, it may not be isolation at all. It may be the soul's way of saying, stay, listen. This silence is where you'll finally hear yourself. Because sometimes the people who love staying at home are the ones who have already found the world inside them. Our homes speak a silent language that goes beyond furniture and decoration. In the world of Carl Jung, the spaces we create around us are not random. They are physical expressions of our inner landscape. Jung recognized that for many people, home isn't just a place to sleep and eat. It's a carefully crafted environment where the soul can breathe freely. When you choose to stay home rather than venture out, you're not simply avoiding the outside world. You're honoring a deeper need for psychological alignment. Jung believed that our living spaces reflect our psyche, becoming external maps of our internal territory. The books on your shelves, the colors on your walls, the arrangement of your favorite chair near the window. These aren't just aesthetic choices, but symbols of what your soul craves. For the home lover, this space becomes what Jung would call a temenos, a sacred enclosure where psychological work can happen undisturbed. In ancient Greek temples, the temenos was the protected area where ordinary rules were suspended, and communion with the divine became possible. Your living room might serve the same purpose, becoming the safe container where your conscious and unconscious mind can meet. This is why returning home often brings such immediate relief. Your shoulders drop, your breathing deepens, and something inside you whispers, "Now I can be myself." Jung would recognize this as the moment when the persona, the mask we wear in public, can be set aside, allowing access to deeper layers of the psyche. The objects in your home carry psychological weight too. Jung was fascinated by how physical items become carriers of meaning and memory. That old armchair isn't just comfortable. It holds the energy of countless evenings spent reading, thinking, and dreaming. The kitchen table isn't merely functional. It's where you've processed your thoughts over countless cups of tea. These objects become what Jung might call charged with psychic energy. They're touchstones for your inner life. There's also something powerful about controlling your environment. In a world where so much feels chaotic and unpredictable, your home offers a rare opportunity for order and intention. Jung understood that creating external order often helps create internal order. Arranging your bookshelf might also be arranging your thoughts. Cleaning your kitchen might also be clearing mental space. The home becomes a canvas where you can make your internal state visible and tangible. Privacy plays a crucial role too. Jung valued the ability to withdraw from social demands to reconnect with the self. He knew that constant social performance drains our energy and distances us from our authentic needs. Your home provides the necessary boundary between the collective and the individual, a psychological membrane that protects your unique inner world from being dissolved into social expectations. This doesn't mean home lovers are afraid of the world. Rather, they understand intuitively what Jung emphasized throughout his work, that meaningful engagement with others must be balanced with solitary reflection. Without this balance, we risk losing touch with ourselves, becoming mere reflections of external demands rather than integrated individuals. The rhythm of leaving and returning home creates a psychological pulse that Jung would recognize as essential for mental health. Each venture into the world is an opportunity for new experience. Each return is a chance to metabolize that experience privately. Home becomes the crucible where raw life is transformed into meaning. Light and darkness in your home environment also speak to Jung's understanding of consciousness. The shadows in your living room corners might mirror the shadow aspects of your psyche, those parts of yourself that remain unexplored. The sunny spots where you like to sit might represent illuminated aspects of your consciousness. Moving through your home becomes a kind of embodied meditation on your inner terrain. Jung believed that our relationship with space goes beyond the practical. It touches the archetypal. When you feel drawn to create a cozy nook for reading, you may be responding to the ancient human need for shelter and protection. When you arrange flowers on your table, you might be enacting the timeless human impulse toward beauty and order amid chaos. For the person who loves staying home, this isn't escapism. It's engagement with life at its most fundamental level. It's recognition that the journey inward is just as vast and important as any outward adventure. In your quiet rooms, surrounded by meaningful objects and free from external demands, you're not hiding from life. You're diving deeper into it. Jung gave us one of the most powerful frameworks for understanding why some of us recharge at home, while others wither in solitude. His concept of introversion and extroversion wasn't just about being shy or outgoing. It was about the fundamental flow of psychic energy. For the introvert, energy naturally moves inward toward concepts, ideas, and internal experiences. For the extrovert, it flows outward toward people, activities, and external engagement. This energy direction isn't a choice or a flaw. It's wired into your psychological makeup. When an introvert spends time in social situations, they're essentially swimming upstream, pushing their energy in a direction contrary to its natural flow. No wonder it feels exhausting. The drain you feel after social interaction isn't weakness. It's simply your psyche telling you that you're operating against your natural energy current. Jung would explain that introverts process experience deeply rather than broadly. While your extroverted friend might happily bounce from conversation to conversation at a party, gathering energy with each new interaction, you're likely processing each exchange thoroughly, examining its nuances and meanings. This deeper processing requires more energy and explains why social situations that energize others leave you feeling depleted. Your need to return home isn't laziness, it's a necessary recalibration. Jung understood that psychological health depends on honoring your innate tendencies rather than constantly fighting against them. When you retreat to your personal space after socializing, you're not avoiding life. You're restoring the energy balance that allows you to engage with life authentically. The quiet of your home provides something essential: space for inner dialogue. Jung placed enormous value on the conversation between different aspects of the psyche. In the silence of your living room, free from external noise and demands, your conscious mind can finally hear the whispers of the unconscious. This internal conversation is how psychological integration happens. It's not a luxury, but a necessity for wholeness. Jung's concept of the collective unconscious also helps explain the social fatigue many home lovers experience. When you're in public spaces, the workplace, social gatherings, even shopping centers, you're swimming in collective energies and expectations. These aren't just social pressures. They're psychological currents that can overwhelm your individual consciousness if you don't have adequate boundaries. Your home creates that boundary, allowing you to distinguish between what's truly yours and what belongs to the collective. There's also a rhythm to psychological energy that Jung recognized. Just as nature moves through cycles of activity and rest, human consciousness needs periods of engagement and withdrawal. The problem in modern society is that we often value constant activity and visibility while suspecting those who step back for reflection. But Jung would argue that these withdrawal phases are precisely when the most important psychological work happens, when insights arise, patterns become clear, and new possibilities emerge. By the way, if you're curious to go even deeper and integrate your shadows and light, check out the Siam Method ebook. It's a concise guide that can help you unlock your inner power in just 5 minutes a day. The link is in the first pinned comment below. This doesn't mean introverts don't need connection. Jung emphasized that all humans require both solitude and relationship. The difference lies in proportion and quality rather than kind. While an extrovert might thrive on numerous brief connections, the introvert typically prefers fewer but deeper relationships. Your preference for meaningful conversation with one close friend, rather than casual chatter with many acquaintances, reflects this orientation toward depth over breadth. The home environment supports this quality of connection. When you invite someone into your personal space, you're creating conditions for authentic exchange rather than social performance. Many introverts find they can connect more meaningfully within their own territory, where they feel secure and grounded in their energy. Jung would recognize this as creating the right container for genuine human contact. Digital communication presents its own challenges to psychic energy. While social media and messaging apps may seem less draining than in-person interaction, they still demand psychological engagement with others. Jung didn't live to see our hyper-connected world, but his principles suggest that constant digital availability would tax the introvert's energy system just as surely as constant physical socializing. Your need to disconnect from devices and social platforms is another way of protecting your natural energy flow. Understanding your energy pattern isn't about labeling yourself or limiting your experiences. Jung saw psychological types not as rigid categories, but as tendencies that could be worked with consciously. Loving your home doesn't mean never leaving it. It means recognizing it as the place where your energy naturally replenishes, and planning your engagements with the world accordingly. When you honor this need for retreat and reflection, something remarkable happens. Your outward engagements become more meaningful and authentic. By giving yourself permission to recharge at home, you bring a fuller, more integrated presence to your interactions when you do choose to engage. This isn't selfishness. It's the sustainable rhythm that allows you to offer your true gifts to the world. We live in a world that never stops moving, never stops talking, never stops demanding our attention. Social media notifications, work emails, group chats, and constant invitations create a storm of connectivity that feels normal. But Jung would recognize it as profoundly unnatural for human psychology. This hyper-connected lifestyle casts a shadow that many don't see until they're caught in its darkness. Jung believed that anything pushed to an extreme creates its opposite in the unconscious. When our culture worships constant availability and visibility, something in our deeper mind begins to scream for boundaries, silence, and privacy. The person who loves staying home might simply be listening to this inner voice before it turns into a shout, or worse, a breakdown. Look at what happens when we deny this need for retreat. Anxiety rises, sleep becomes difficult. Thoughts scatter like leaves in the wind. Decisions feel impossible to make. Jung would see these symptoms not as personal failings, but as messages from the psyche saying, this pattern isn't sustainable. Something must change. The shadow of hyperconnectivity also appears in our relationships. When we're constantly available to everyone, we're rarely fully present for anyone, including ourselves. Shallow connections multiply while depth diminishes. Jung emphasized that meaningful human contact requires focused attention and emotional presence, precisely what becomes impossible when we're perpetually distracted by the next notification, the next event, the next demand. There's also what Jung might call the inflation of the social self. When external validation becomes our primary source of worth, the ego expands unnaturally, disconnected from the balancing forces of the unconscious. Social media amplifies this danger, creating environments where appearance trumps substance and quantity of connections outweighs quality. The person who steps back from this system isn't antisocial. They're protecting the integrity of their selfhood. Home provides the antidote to this inflation. In private spaces, without an audience to perform for, we encounter ourselves as we truly are. This can be uncomfortable at first. Jung noted that meeting our authentic self often is, but it's the only path to genuine psychological growth. The quiet evening at home might seem uneventful compared to a night out, but psychologically, it might be where your most important work happens. Jung understood something our productivity-obsessed culture often forgets. Fallow periods are essential for creativity and insight. Just as agricultural fields need seasons of rest to remain fertile, the human mind requires periods of apparent nothing to generate new ideas. What looks like doing nothing at home might actually be the unconscious processing that leads to your next breakthrough. Without this space, we produce only what Jung might call shallow copies of existing patterns rather than authentic innovation. The physical symptoms of excessive socialization deserve attention too. Headaches, fatigue, insomnia, digestive issues. These aren't just inconveniences, but communications from the body-mind system saying, enough. Jung recognized the profound connection between psychological and physical well-being long before it became mainstream. Your body's relief when you finally close the door behind you isn't laziness, it's wisdom. There's also a spiritual dimension to the shadow of hyperconnectivity that Jung would recognize immediately. When every moment is filled with noise and activity, where is the space for meaning to emerge? Jung believed that the divine speaks in whispers, not shouts, and these whispers can only be heard in moments of receptive silence. Your quiet evening might create the very conditions necessary for encountering what Jung would call the transcendent function, the process that connects conscious and unconscious, leading to new levels of understanding. This isn't about rejecting the world, but engaging with it more meaningfully. Jung emphasized throughout his work that true individuation, the process of becoming your whole self, requires both separation and connection in the right measure. The home lover's rhythm of retreat and engagement often reflects this natural cycle more honestly than the constantly connected alternative. Technology makes this balance particularly challenging. The devices that promise to connect us often lead to what Jung might call a dissociated state, physically present but psychologically fragmented. Home becomes crucial as the place where this fragmentation can heal, where attention can gather itself again into wholeness. Turning off notifications and setting aside screens creates the container for psychological integration that Jung saw as essential for health. The most insidious aspect of hyperconnectivity is how it distances us from nature's rhythms. Jung recognized our deep connection to natural cycles and warned about the psychological consequences of severing this relationship. Your home can become a microclimate where natural rhythms are honored, where darkness brings rest, where seasons are acknowledged, where the mechanical time of productivity gives way to the organic time of being. When you choose home over constant social engagement, you're not just making a preference known. You're making a statement about what kind of consciousness you value. Jung believed that individual choices contribute to collective transformation. By honoring your need for depth, silence, and meaningful connection, you create ripples that extend far beyond your living room. Ripples that might help restore balance to a world spinning increasingly out of alignment with human psychological needs. Individuation, the process of becoming your whole, authentic self, stands at the heart of Jung's psychology. While many assume this journey requires dramatic outer changes, Jung recognized that the most profound transformation often happens in quiet, private spaces. Your love of staying home might be the intuitive wisdom of a self-seeking wholeness through what Jung called the inner work. Solitude creates the conditions for meeting yourself honestly. When external voices fade, your own inner voice grows clearer. Jung emphasized that each person carries a unique psychological destiny, what he called the self with a capital S, distinct from social expectations or collective patterns. This self can only fully emerge when given space away from external pressures and judgments. Home becomes the vessel for this emergence. Within your personal space, you can experiment with different aspects of your identity without fear of rejection or misunderstanding. You can explore interests that don't fit neatly into social categories. You can feel emotions fully without moderating them for others' comfort. Jung would recognize these explorations not as self-indulgence, but as necessary steps towards psychological integration. The quiet hours spent reading, reflecting, creating, or simply being present contain what Jung might call active imagination, the conscious engagement with unconscious material that builds bridges between different parts of the psyche. This internal dialogue happens most naturally when external dialogue pauses. Your preference for home might simply reflect your psyche's recognition that this inner conversation needs protected space. Dreams play a crucial role in this process. Jung considered dreams the primary way the unconscious communicates with consciousness, offering symbols and scenarios that balance our waking perspective. When you prioritize good sleep and quiet mornings for remembering and reflecting on dreams, you're engaging in precisely the psychological practice Jung most valued. Home provides the stability and continuity that makes this dream work possible. There's also the matter of psychological boundaries. Jung understood that a strong sense of self requires clear differentiation from others, knowing where you end and the world begins. Home physically represents this psychological necessity. Your decisions about who enters your space, when, and under what conditions are not merely social preferences, but statements about identity and selfhood. The person who guards their home time isn't necessarily antisocial. They may simply understand intuitively the importance of boundary maintenance for psychological health. Creativity flourishes in this bounded solitude. Jung recognized that genuinely new ideas emerge not from social consensus, but from individual encounters with the unconscious. Your quiet hours of experimentation, whether through art, writing, music, cooking, or simply new patterns of thought, create pathways between conscious and unconscious that eventually benefit not just you, but the collective. What appears as missing out socially might actually be tuning in creatively. The rhythms of home allow for something our rushed society rarely permits: psychological digestion. Just as the body needs time to process food, the psyche needs time to assimilate experiences. Without this digestion, we collect experiences without integrating them, leading to what Jung might call psychological indigestion, a state of being full, yet unnourished. Your evening at home after a stimulating day isn't withdrawal, it's completion of the experience cycle. This doesn't mean individuation happens in isolation. Jung emphasized that we need mirrors, other people who reflect aspects of ourselves we cannot see directly. But these mirrors work best when we approach them from a centered place rather than a fragmented one. Your carefully chosen social engagements, emerging from a foundation of solitude, likely contain more authentic connection than constant but superficial interaction. Home provides stability during the sometimes turbulent process of psychological growth. Jung noted that individuation isn't always comfortable. Encountering previously unconscious aspects of yourself can be disorienting or even frightening. Having a safe physical space where you can process these encounters becomes essential. Your home isn't just where you live, it's where you become. This transformative solitude connects to Jung's concept of the night sea journey, the descent into darker aspects of the psyche that precedes new awareness. Often depicted in myths as the hero's solitary ordeal, this journey rarely happens amid social distraction. Your quiet evenings might contain more adventure than appears on the surface, as you navigate the depths and heights of your own consciousness. Technology offers both opportunities and challenges for this inner work. While digital tools can connect you with ideas and communities that support individuation, they can also become escapes from the sometimes uncomfortable process of facing yourself. Jung would likely advise creating technology-free zones within your home, sacred spaces where the only network you access is your own inner one. The ultimate gift of home-centered individuation is authenticity. When you regularly spend time checking external actions against internal truth, alignment naturally develops. Jung believed this alignment creates not just personal well-being, but ripples of positive change in relationships and communities. By honoring your need for home and solitude, you're not withdrawing from the world, you're preparing to offer it your most authentic self, the only real gift any of us have to give. Throughout human history, across vastly different cultures, a powerful figure appears again and again, the hermit, the sage, the wise one who dwells apart. Jung recognized this recurring pattern as an archetype, a universal image embedded in the collective unconscious that speaks to something essential in human experience. When you feel that pull towards solitude and home, you might be responding to this ancient archetype awakening within you. The hermit appears in countless stories: the wise woman in the forest cottage, the monk in the mountain cave, the scholar in the secluded library. These figures aren't portrayed as failures of social connection, but as holders of unique wisdom unavailable to those caught in the whirl of ordinary life. Jung would suggest that your homeward orientation connects you to this timeless stream of wisdom seekers who recognize that certain truths can only be found in solitude. What makes the hermit archetype so powerful is its universality. From Taoist sages in ancient China to desert fathers in early Christianity, from Hindu sadhus to Native American vision questers, the deliberate step back from society appears across traditions as a path to deeper understanding. This isn't coincidence. Jung would see it as evidence that the human psyche naturally recognizes the need for periods of withdrawal and reflection. The hermit archetype carries specific gifts. Perspective is perhaps the most important, the ability to see patterns that remain invisible to those embedded within them. By stepping back from social currents, you gain the psychological distance needed to observe rather than simply react. Your home becomes the equivalent of the mountaintop from which larger patterns of human behavior become visible. There's also the gift of depth. The hermit digs deeply rather than spreading widely. In our culture of constant movement and novelty, this vertical dimension of experience is often neglected. Jung believed that meaningful human development requires this downward movement, not just accumulating experiences, but penetrating them for their essence. Your quiet evenings at home might contain more genuine adventure than a year of shallow travels. The hermit knows something our busy world often forgets, that presence precedes insight. Before you can know something truly, you must first be fully present with it. This quality of attention becomes increasingly rare in a fragmented culture, making it all the more valuable. When you create space at home for undivided attention, to a book, a thought, a feeling, even a cup of tea, you're practicing what mystics across traditions have recognized as the foundation of wisdom. This doesn't mean the hermit archetype demands complete isolation. Even historically, hermits often maintained connections with their communities, receiving visitors seeking guidance and occasionally venturing out themselves. What distinguishes them is not the absence of connection, but its intentionality. Your careful curation of social engagement, choosing quality over quantity, depth over breadth, reflects this hermit wisdom. The hermit also models healthy disregard for social approval. In a world where likes, follows, and constant visibility often determine perceived worth, the choice to step back represents a radical act of psychological independence. Jung emphasized the importance of distinguishing your authentic self from social expectations. The hermit archetype embodies this distinction, valuing inner alignment over external validation. There's a paradoxical aspect to the hermit that Jung would appreciate. By stepping back from the collective, the hermit often ends up serving it more profoundly. History's great philosophers, scientists, artists, and spiritual teachers frequently required periods of retreat to develop the insights that later transformed their societies. Your home-centered life might be creating space for contributions that wouldn't be possible amid constant social engagement. The hermit also carries wisdom about resources, both internal and external. In a culture of excess and constant consumption, the hermit represents sufficiency and careful discernment. Your preference for a simple evening at home over expensive outings might reflect not just financial wisdom, but psychological wisdom, recognizing that well-being often requires less rather than more, quality rather than quantity. There's something inherently courageous about embracing the hermit archetype in a society that often misunderstands it. Jung recognized that following your authentic psychological pattern sometimes means moving against the prevailing current. When you choose home despite social pressure to be constantly engaged and visible, you're exhibiting the quiet courage that has characterized wisdom seekers throughout history. The hermit also knows the value of silence, not just external quiet, but internal stillness. Jung believed that certain truths can only emerge in the spaces between thoughts, in moments when the chattering mind grows still. These moments rarely happen amid noise and activity. Your quiet home becomes the sanctuary where internal silence becomes possible, opening doorways to insights that thinking alone cannot reach. The cycle of withdrawal and return that characterizes the hermit's journey mirrors natural rhythms. Just as plants draw nutrients inward during winter before flowering in spring, human consciousness needs periods of gathering inward before authentic expression becomes possible. Your home time isn't static, it's the dynamic inward movement that makes meaningful outward movement possible. This connection to natural cycles points to another aspect of the hermit archetype, its rootedness in the body and earth. Jung recognized that genuine psychological wisdom never floats above physical reality, but remains grounded in embodied experience. Your home, with its sensory comforts and familiar rhythms, keeps you connected to this embodied dimension that abstract social engagement sometimes neglects. By honoring the hermit archetype within you, you're not rejecting the world, but engaging with a dimension of human experience as old as humanity itself. You're creating space for a kind of knowing that our hyperactive society increasingly lacks. The deep, patient understanding that emerges not from more information, but from fuller presence with what already is. Jung's concept of synchronicity, meaningful coincidences beyond simple cause and effect, flourishes in the quiet attention of home life. While others search for significance in dramatic external events, your home environment creates the perfect conditions for noticing the subtle threads of meaning woven through everyday moments. The book that falls open to exactly what you needed to read. The photograph that surfaces just as you were thinking of that person. The song that plays as you consider a decision. In the attentive space of home, these aren't mere coincidences, but glimpses of a deeper pattern connecting inner and outer worlds. Your daily rituals, morning coffee, evening reading, weekend cooking, create what Jung recognized as containers for psychological meaning. These aren't just habits, but modern sacred practices, creating islands of order and significance within life's uncertainty. Time shifts at home, moving beyond mechanical ticking into what Jung might call kairos, the right moment for something to happen. The insight while washing dishes couldn't have arrived any sooner. It needed precisely that moment of receptive attention. The objects around you participate in this meaning web. Jung understood how physical items become carriers of psychological significance. The candle flame links you to humanity's ancient relationship with fire. Plants connect you to natural cycles. These aren't decorative elements, but bridges between personal consciousness and collective patterns. Perhaps most profound is how your home becomes not just a reflection of who you are, but a co-creator in who you are becoming. The space shapes you as surely as you shape it, in a dance of mutual influence that Jung would recognize as the essence of transformation. What looks like just staying home might actually be the most important journey possible, not around the world, but into the infinite depths of your own being.